The woman at the gas station bathroom door smiled at me like she already knew exactly how I was going to die. At least, that's how it felt when I looked back on it later. At the time, it was just a weird smile, the kind strangers sometimes give when they're trying too hard to look harmless, the kind that doesn't reach their eyes. This happened 3 years ago when my fiance, Nolan, and I were driving from western Colorado to South Carolina after his younger brother's wedding. We decided to turn the trip into a little road adventure, taking scenic back roads instead of flying. It was supposed to be fun. Cheap motels, roadside diners, random attractions. The kind of spontaneous trip people post online and pretend was effortless. By the third day, though, all the excitement had burned off. We were somewhere in the middle of eastern Oklahoma, miles from anything familiar and both running on fumes. It was late, probably close to 11:30 p.m. The highway stretched ahead like a black ribbon under the headlights, endless and empty. We hadn't passed another car in nearly 15 minutes. I'd been asleep against the passenger window when Nolan shook my shoulder. "Hey," he said, "I'm pulling into this station, need gas." I blinked awake and looked around. The station sat by itself just off the highway, lit by harsh white floodlights that made everything look flat and unnatural. It had 4 pumps, a squat convenience store, and a cracked asphalt lot surrounded by open fields. No other buildings, no houses, no signs of life beyond the glow of that little station in the darkness. Nolan yawned. "You good?" "Bathroom," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. He nodded. "I'll fill up." I climbed out, stretching my stiff legs. The night air was warm and sticky, carrying that faint smell of wet grass and diesel fuel. Inside, the station was almost painfully quiet. A man in his 60s sat behind the register reading a paperback under the counterlight. He barely glanced up when I walked in. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A coffee machine hissed somewhere near the back. That was it. The bathrooms were down a narrow hallway to the left. I remember hesitating before walking down it. It felt darker than it should have. The overhead bulb flickered every few seconds, making the walls flash between yellow-white and shadow. I told myself I was just tired, nothing more. When I pushed open the women's restroom door, I nearly collided with someone coming out. I jumped. She didn't. The woman just stopped and stared at me. She looked to be maybe 50, though it was hard to tell. Her skin had that rough, weathered look of someone who'd spent years outdoors. Gray blonde hair hung in uneven clumps around her face, greasy and tangled. What struck me most was her coat. It was thick, quilted, and dark green, the kind of winter coat you'd wear in January. This was late July. It had to be at least 80 degrees outside. She also carried a plastic grocery bag clutched tightly in one hand. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there staring. I gave an awkward little smile and tried stepping around her. For a moment, she blocked the doorway. Then she slowly shifted aside. As I entered, I caught a strange smell coming from her. Not body odor, something chemical, sharp and bitter, like bleach mixed with metal. The hairs on the back of my neck rose instantly. I locked myself in the nearest stall and tried to shake it off. Weird people existed, especially at roadside stops after midnight. Still, something about her unsettled me. I finished quickly and sat there for another few seconds, debating whether to wait until she'd left. Then I heard the sink faucet turn on. Water ran for maybe 5 seconds, then stopped. No stepfalls. No door opening. Nothing. I frowned. Most people washed their hands longer than that. I listened harder. Silence. Then came the soft scrape of rubber against tile. Flip-flops. Moving slowly. Not towards the exit. Towards my stall. I froze. The sound stopped directly outside my door. No breathing. No movement. Just stillness. I stared at the metal latch, suddenly very aware of how flimsy it looked. Then, without warning, a shadow passed under my stall. She moved away. A second later, the bathroom door opened and slammed shut. I let out the breath I'd been holding. She was gone. I waited maybe 20 seconds before unlocking the stall. That's when I heard breathing. Slow, heavy, very close. Not outside the bathroom, inside it. My blood ran cold. I stopped dead. The breathing was coming from somewhere near the entrance. She hadn't left. She'd opened and slammed the door to make me think she had. I stood perfectly still, one hand gripping the stall door. The breathing continued. Wet, deliberate, like she was trying not to laugh. Every instinct screamed at me not to move. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 30 seconds? Maybe 5 minutes. Then the door opened and closed again. This time I heard footsteps leaving. Real footsteps. The breathing stopped. Still, I waited another full minute before stepping out. The bathroom was empty. I washed my hands as fast as I could and practically ran back into the main store. The cashier hadn't moved. Nolan was inside now, grabbing snacks from a shelf. The relief I felt seeing him was immediate. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. I didn't want to sound ridiculous. What was I supposed to say? Some weird woman stood outside my stall breathing dramatically? He'd laugh. I grabbed a bottle of water and followed him to the register. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. As Nolan paid, I glanced toward the front windows. The woman was standing outside, right beside our car, watching us. Her face was expressionless, one hand still clutching that plastic bag, the other hidden inside her coat pocket. My stomach dropped. "Nolan," I whispered. He turned. By the time he looked, she was already moving. Not walking casually, backing off, keeping her eyes on the store, then slipping around the side of the building. "What?" he said. "That woman." He frowned. "What woman?" "She was just there." He looked unconcerned, probably assuming I was overtired. We walked outside together. The parking lot was empty except for our SUV and an old rusted pickup near the edge of the lot. The woman was nowhere in sight. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling she was watching. Nolan unlocked the car. I climbed in fast and immediately locked my door. He gave me a sideways glance. Seriously, what happened? So I told him. The bathroom, the fake exit, the breathing, the staring. He listened quietly, his expression growing more serious. "That's weird," he admitted. "Yeah." He started the engine. "Probably just some unstable drifter." "Did you see what was in her hand?" "No." "It looked like a knife." That got his attention. He looked toward the side of the building. Nothing. After a moment, he pulled out of the station. The white lights receded behind us as we rejoined the highway. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Nolan checked the rearview mirror. "There's a car pulling out behind us." I turned. Headlights emerged from the gas station lot, far too quickly. My chest tightened. "Is it her?" He squinted. "No idea." The vehicle accelerated hard, closing distance fast. And as it came closer, illuminated briefly under a highway sign, I saw it clearly. An old rusted pickup, the same one that had been parked at the edge of the lot, following us. The pickup gained on us fast. At first, Nolan tried to act casual about it. "There are only so many cars out here," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. I kept staring through the rear windshield. The truck's headlights were too bright, glaring white against the darkness, bouncing slightly with every crack in the highway. It stayed centered behind us, not drifting or passing, just holding steady like it had locked onto us. "How close is it?" Nolan asked. "Too close." He glanced at the mirror again. The highway was completely deserted. No other taillights ahead, no approaching headlights in the opposite lane, just us and that truck cutting through miles of open black farmland. Nolan pressed harder on the gas. The SUV climbed from 70 to 80. The pickup matched it instantly.
That was when the first flash came. Its high beams exploded on, flooding our cabin with harsh white light. I flinched and threw a hand over my eyes. Then they clicked off. On again. Off. On. It wasn't random. It was deliberate. Like whoever was driving wanted our full attention. Nolan. I know. He gripped the wheel tighter. Maybe they're trying to warn us about something. The second he said it, we both knew how ridiculous it sounded. A warning doesn't involve stalking someone out of a gas station after midnight. The truck edged closer. Close enough now that I could make out the shape of the grille in the mirror. Rust along the hood, one cracked headlight lens, a dented bumper, and behind the windshield, two silhouettes. Not one, two. Two people, I said. Nolan swore under his breath. Then the truck swerved suddenly into the oncoming lane. For a split second, I thought they were passing. Instead, it pulled alongside us. My breath caught. The passenger window of the truck was already down. The woman from the gas station leaned halfway out, her hair whipped violently in the wind. That same unnatural smile stretched across her face, and in her hand was exactly what I'd feared, a knife, long and reflective, catching flashes of moonlight. She held it up so I could see it clearly, then dragged the blade slowly across her throat in a slicing gesture. I screamed, "Nolan!" He jerked the wheel instinctively. The SUV veered right, tires clipping the rumble strip. The truck surged forward, then dropped back behind us again. "Oh my God," I gasped. "Oh my God." Nolan's face had gone pale. "Seatbelt tight?" "Yes." "Good." He floored it. The engine roared. 90, 95. The truck stayed with us. Its headlights filled the rearview mirror. Then it rammed us. The impact slammed us forward hard enough to knock the air from my lungs. Metal screamed. The back of the SUV fishtailed. Nolan fought the wheel, correcting just enough to keep us from spinning. "Call 911. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone trying to unlock it. No signal, just one useless gray bar flickering in and out. No service. Of course. The truck hit us again, harder this time. The rear window cracked with a sharp spiderweb pattern. I cried out. The woman's face appeared briefly through the fractured glass, smiling wider than before. She looked ecstatic, not angry, not desperate, excited, like this was fun for her. Nolan's jaw clenched. There has to be an exit. I scanned the roadside desperately. Nothing but dark fields and scattered tree lines. Then, far ahead, I saw it. A blue highway sign. Rest area 2 miles. Nolan! He saw it too. The truck rammed us a third time. This one nearly sent us sideways. The SUV lurched violently. For one horrifying second, I thought we were going to roll, but Nolan somehow kept control. He aimed us straight for the upcoming exit ramp. The truck followed. The rest area was small, just a brick building, vending machines, and a parking lot lit by dim sodium lamps. But it wasn't empty. 3 semis sat idling near the entrance. Nolan didn't stop. He laid on the horn continuously as we tore into the lot. The sound shattered the silence. Drivers looked up immediately. The pickup entered behind us but hesitated. Nolan swung the SUV in a hard circle and stopped near the trucks. Several men were already climbing down from their cabs. Big men, confused and alert. The pickup idled near the entrance. For a second, no one moved. Then one trucker started walking towards it. Another pulled out his phone. The pickup reversed sharply. Its tires squealed, and it tore back out onto the highway. Gone, just like that. I sat frozen in my seat, unable to process what had happened. Nolan was breathing so hard his chest shook. One of the truckers knocked on my window. "You folks okay?" That question broke whatever spell I was under. I burst into tears. The truckers called state police. We gave statements while 2 officers inspected the damage. The rear bumper was crushed inward. Paint from the pickup streaked across the metal. The officers took everything seriously at first, especially when I described the woman and the knife. But when they checked the gas station 20 miles back, things got strange. There had been no woman matching my description on security footage, no rusted pickup in the lot, and according to the clerk working that night, no one besides Nolan and me entered the store in over an hour. That didn't make sense. I knew what I saw. I'd been face to face with her. The officer suggested exhaustion might have distorted details, stress, adrenaline, fear. I wanted to argue, but then he mentioned something else. The station had one exterior camera facing the pumps. It captured our SUV leaving. Exactly 30 seconds later, the rusted pickup appeared from behind the building and followed. No woman visible, no sign of where it had been parked, just suddenly there, as if it had been waiting in the dark behind the station the entire time. The truck was never found. Neither were the two people inside. Police traced the partial plate I'd managed to remember, but it belonged to a vehicle reported scrapped 8 years earlier in Arkansas. We finished our drive to South Carolina and daylight only. No more night driving, no more isolated stations, no more bathroom stops alone. For months afterwards, I had nightmares about that woman standing outside the stall, breathing quietly in the dark. But the part that still unnerves me most happened 6 weeks later. We received a small padded envelope in the mail, no return address. Inside was a cheap disposable razor and a folded receipt from that gas station. Scrawled across the back in jagged black marker were 4 words: "You should have stayed inside." We handed it over to police. They found no fingerprints, no usable DNA, nothing. We moved apartments shortly after, changed our route habits, installed cameras. Maybe it was paranoia, maybe not. But sometimes when I stop at brightly lit convenience stores late at night, I catch myself scanning the parking lot for a rusted pickup. And every time I walk into a public restroom alone, I check under the stall door first, just in case someone is standing there, waiting for me to make the first move.
I used to think highway rest stops were the safest places you could pull over at night. They were always lit, usually had security cameras, and there were enough people coming and going that it felt impossible for anything truly bad to happen there. If you drove long enough for work, they became part of your routine. Stretch your legs, use the bathroom, grab a coffee, and get back on the road. That assumption nearly got me killed. This happened in February of 2021 when I was working as an overnight courier for a regional auto parts distributor based in Missouri. The job was simple enough. I'd pick up specialty parts from our warehouse in Kansas City and deliver them to repair shops, dealerships, and industrial garages across neighboring states. Most routes were manageable, but every now and then they'd assign a long-distance emergency delivery, the kind where some expensive machine was down and every hour mattered. That night, I was hauling a transmission assembly to a repair facility outside Peoria, Illinois. I'd left Kansas City around 8:30 p.m. and had been driving for nearly 4 hours straight. By midnight, Interstate 74 was almost completely empty. The road stretched endlessly through frozen farmland, broken only by the occasional overpass or cluster of distant lights from some tiny town I'd never heard of. Snow from earlier that week had hardened into dirty gray banks along the shoulder. The temperature on my dashboard read 11 degrees. I was exhausted. Not the kind of tired where coffee fixes things. The dangerous kind. The kind where your eyes blur for half a second and suddenly you realize you've drifted toward the shoulder. I slapped myself twice and rolled the window down for cold air. It helped for maybe 5 minutes. Then I saw the blue highway sign. Rest area 1 mile. Perfect. I figured I'd stop, splash water on my face, maybe walk around for 10 minutes before finishing the last leg. The rest area appeared a minute later, tucked just off the interstate. It was small, a single brick building with vending machines out front, about 15 parking spaces, and tall sodium lights casting everything in that eerie orange glow. Only one other vehicle was there, a white cargo van parked all the way at the far end of the lot. Its lights were off,
No visible markings, no side windows. It looked old enough to survive 2 owners and at least one questionable repaint job. I noticed it, but only briefly. A lot of people sleep in rest stops: truckers, travelers, people too tired to keep going. I parked near the building under the brightest light available and shut off my engine. The silence was immediate. No nearby traffic, no wind, nothing except the faint buzz of the overhead lamp. I grabbed my phone and stepped out into the bitter cold. The air hit like a slap. Inside the building, the heater was running too hot, that dry, artificial heat that makes your skin feel tight. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. The place was empty. No attendant, no janitor, no other travelers. Just rows of vending machines and the hallway leading to the restrooms. I headed into the men's room. The sound of my footsteps echoed sharply against the tile. There were 4 stalls, 2 sinks, and one of those industrial hand dryers mounted crookedly to the wall. The whole place smelled faintly of bleach and mildew. I splashed water on my face and stared at my reflection. Red eyes, unshaven jaw, exhaustion written all over me. That was when I heard the door open behind me. I turned immediately. No one. The restroom was still empty. I frowned. Maybe the wind caught it, though I hadn't felt any draft. I listened for a moment. Nothing. Just the rattling heater vent overhead. I finished quickly and headed back outside. The second I stepped into the parking lot, something felt wrong. The white cargo van's headlights were on now. Both of them, bright and pointed directly at my truck. I froze. I hadn't heard an engine start, hadn't heard a door open, no movement at all, just headlights where there hadn't been any 30 seconds earlier. I stood there staring. Then just as suddenly they shut off. Darkness swallowed the van again. A knot formed in my stomach. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe someone inside had accidentally hit the switch. Maybe they'd adjusted something and turned them off. Still, I walked faster to my truck, locked the doors the second I got in, started the engine, and left. For the first few miles, everything was normal. The interstate was empty. The road stretched ahead in twin tunnels of headlights. My breathing slowed. I started feeling ridiculous for being unsettled. Then I checked my rearview mirror. Headlights. Far back, but unmistakable. I watched them grow larger, closing fast. Within minutes, the vehicle was right behind me. Even before I could make out the shape, I knew. The white van. It sat barely 2 car lengths off my bumper. I was already doing 75. It should have either passed or backed off. Instead, it stayed there, matching my speed exactly. I switched lanes. It switched with me. I slowed slightly. It slowed too. That's when my pulse began hammering. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe they were just heading the same direction. Then the van moved into the left lane and pulled alongside me. Its windows were heavily tinted, but I could make out movement inside. The driver's window lowered halfway. A man leaned toward the opening. Baseball cap, dark jacket, his face mostly shadowed. He gestured urgently for me to roll my window down. I hesitated, then shook my head. He pointed toward the back of my truck repeatedly, mouthing something I couldn't hear. For a split second, I wondered if maybe something had come loose. A latch, cargo strap, some mechanical issue. Then logic hit me. My truck bed was empty, completely empty. The transmission assembly was secured inside the covered cargo compartment attached to the cab. There was nothing back there for him to point at. The man's motions became more aggressive. He kept signaling, insistent, urgent. Then his van surged ahead and cut sharply in front of me. My instincts kicked in before my brain could process what was happening. I slammed on the brakes. The truck lurched hard enough that the transmission case in the rear compartment shifted with a heavy metallic thud. The white van shot across my front bumper with maybe 2 feet to spare. If I'd reacted even half a second later, they would have clipped me. At 75 miles an hour, that would have sent my truck spinning across black ice and straight into the median. The van corrected itself and swerved back into the right lane. For a second, I thought they'd lost control, but then they slowed, deliberately. Their brake lights glowed bright red as they dropped speed fast enough that I had no choice but either pass them or stop completely. That was when I understood what they were trying to do: box me in, force me off the road. My chest tightened so hard it felt impossible to breathe. I jerked the wheel into the left lane and accelerated. The engine whined in protest. 90, 95. The van stayed glued beside me, its passenger window lowered all the way. The second man leaned halfway out. He was holding something. At first, I thought it was a flashlight. Then moonlight caught the metal. A tire iron. He raised it slightly, almost casually, and tapped it against the door frame while staring straight at me. Not threatening wildly, not shouting, just staring, like he already knew how this was going to end. That calmness terrified me more than anything. People acting on impulse are unpredictable, but calm people have plans. I gripped the wheel so hard my fingers went numb. My options were running out. The road ahead was empty and dark. No exits, no gas stations, nothing. Just miles of frozen Illinois farmland. Then I saw it. A green highway sign flashing briefly in my headlights. Service Plaza, 6 miles. It wasn't much, but it was something. I only had to make it 6 miles. The problem was the van clearly had no intention of letting me. The driver suddenly swerved into my lane. Metal screamed as his bumper clipped my rear quarter panel. The truck fishtailed violently. For one horrifying second, all I could see through the windshield was guardrail. I fought the skid, overcorrected, then somehow straightened out. The van dropped back, maybe expecting me to spin. When I didn't, they surged forward again. I knew they'd hit me harder this time, hard enough to finish it. Panic sharpened everything, every dashboard light, every vibration, every breath. And then a memory surfaced. Years earlier, my dad had taught me something while driving snowy backroads in Missouri. If someone's pushing your rear quarter, don't fight the spin where they expect, break their angle. At the time, it sounded overly technical. Now it was all I had. The van accelerated toward my left rear. Just before impact, I yanked the wheel slightly toward them and stomped the brakes. The move was sudden enough to ruin their angle. Instead of connecting cleanly, their bumper glanced off mine. The van lurched sideways. Its rear end swung out. For a split second, it drifted broadside across both lanes. Then the driver overcorrected. The van shot across the shoulder, hit the snowy embankment, and launched into the ditch. I saw it roll once, twice, then disappear into darkness beyond the roadside fence. Silence, just empty highway behind me. I didn't stop, didn't even consider it. I floored the truck and kept driving. Every instinct screamed at me to get somewhere public, somewhere bright, somewhere with witnesses. The service plaza finally appeared like a beacon. Huge lights, fuel pumps, rows of parked semis. I pulled straight to the center of the lot and practically jumped out before the truck fully stopped. Inside the attached diner, warmth and noise hit me all at once. Conversations, silverware clinking, a TV playing muted sports highlights. It felt surreal after the silent terror of the highway. A waitress near the register looked up immediately. She must have seen my face because she asked if I was okay before I even spoke. I told her everything in one breathless rush. The van, the chase, the collision, the crash. A massive truck driver seated at the counter stood before I'd even finished. He was probably in his 60s, broad as a refrigerator, gray beard tucked into a flannel jacket. Without saying much, he motioned me to follow him outside. 2 other drivers joined us. We walked the perimeter of the lot. No van, no headlights approaching, nothing. Still, they insisted I stay put. One of them called state police. Another brought me coffee. I sat there shaking so badly I could barely hold the cup. About 40 minutes later, 2 troopers arrived. I gave my statement. They drove back to the stretch where the van had gone off-road. What they found made my stomach turn. The ditch was empty. No van, no debris, no skid marks leading back onto the highway. Nothing. It was as if the vehicle had vanished. The troopers were polite but skeptical. One suggested maybe the van hadn't rolled as badly as I thought and managed to drive off. Possible, I guess, but I knew what I saw. That thing had flipped. Hard. There should have been wreckage. At minimum, tracks in the snow. There weren't. Before leaving, one of the troopers examined my truck. The damage to the rear quarter panel confirmed impact, so at least they knew I hadn't imagined that part. I stayed at the plaza until sunrise. One of the truckers, the older guy in flannel, walked me out when it was finally time to leave. Before I got in my truck, he glanced at the dented panel and said something I still think about. "You're not the first driver I've heard describe that van on this stretch." I stared at him. He shrugged. "Saw reports posted at a few depots over the years. White cargo van, usually late winter, usually around this part of I-74. Folks say it runs people off the road." I asked if anyone had ever been caught. He shook his head. "Nope." I finished the delivery that morning, then drove straight home. The company thought I was overreacting. Maybe I was, but I couldn't bring myself to drive those overnight interstate routes anymore. To this day, whenever I'm on a long highway after dark, I check every pair of headlights behind me. And sometimes, if the road is empty enough and the night is quiet enough, I swear I spot a white cargo van lingering just far enough back to make me wonder. Always matching my speed, always waiting.